Most people misunderstand what faking it till you make it actually means. They think it's about lying, about pretending to be someone you're not, about hollow performance and empty promises. That misunderstanding keeps them trapped in mediocrity while they judge those who are quietly building empires around them. Machiavelli understood something most people refuse to accept. Perception shapes reality more powerfully than reality itself. The person who appears competent will be given opportunities the actually competent person never sees if that competent person fails to project their capability outward. This video is about why successful people don't wait for permission to act like they've already arrived. It's about why the wealthy adopt the psychology of wealth before the bank account reflects it. And it's about why those who refuse to do this, those who insist on earning every ounce of confidence through external validation first, end up watching from the sidelines while others less qualified take what could have been theirs. Here's what nobody tells you. The world does not reward you based on your internal journey. It rewards you based on what you signal. Machiavelli wrote that men judge by the eye rather than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel. What he meant was this: people respond to what they perceive, not to what you know yourself to be. You can be the most capable person in the room, but if you carry yourself like you're still trying to prove it, people will treat you accordingly. They will test you, they will undervalue you. They will make you earn respect in ways they never demanded from someone who simply assumed it from the start. Successful people understand this instinctively. They know that confidence isn't the result of success. Confidence is the prerequisite. And when I say confidence, I don't mean arrogance or delusion. I mean the ability to act as if the outcome is inevitable before the evidence arrives. That's not fake, that's strategic. Most people wait their entire lives for someone to tell them they're ready. They wait for the degree, the promotion, the recognition, the external stamp of approval that says now you can believe in yourself. Machiavelli would call this voluntary servitude. You've handed control of your identity to forces outside yourself. And as long as you do that, you'll never move faster than those forces allow. The people you admire, the ones who seem to rise effortlessly, they stopped waiting. They didn't wait to feel ready. They didn't wait until imposter syndrome disappeared. They acted ready, and the world responded by treating them as if they were. That's not deception. That's understanding how human perception works. It's understanding that people make decisions based on limited information and social cues, and if you control those cues, you control the decision. Let me be clear about something before we go further, because I know there's always resistance to this kind of thinking. Some of you are uncomfortable right now. You're thinking this sounds manipulative, this sounds dishonest, this sounds like everything I was taught not to do. Machiavelli would tell you that discomfort is the sound of a belief system being challenged. It doesn't mean the idea is wrong. It means you've been taught to value a certain kind of purity over effectiveness. And purity doesn't pay bills. It doesn't open doors. It doesn't protect you when someone less honest and more strategic decides to take what's yours. The reason people react emotionally to ideas like this is because they've been raised in systems that benefit from their obedience. You were taught to wait your turn, to earn things slowly, to never appear too confident or too ambitious. Why? Because people who wait are predictable. People who ask permission are controllable. Machiavelli observed that those in power stay in power by convincing everyone else that the rules are sacred, even while they break those rules constantly. I'm not telling you to lie. I'm telling you to stop waiting for a world that rewards patience to suddenly notice you. It won't. What I'm about to show you is how successful people use perception, timing, and psychology to shape how they're treated long before their results justify it. And if you think that's unfair, you're right. It is unfair. But refusing to play the game doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you a spectator. So if you're ready to stop judging the people who are winning and start learning how they actually think, then pay attention. Because once you see how this works, you can't unsee it. And once you start applying it, you'll realize how much time you wasted trying to prove yourself to people who were never paying that much attention in the first place. Before we continue, ask yourself this. Have you been waiting for someone to give you permission to act like the person you want to become? Drop a comment with one word that describes how that question makes you feel. And if you're here because you're tired of playing by rules that only seem to apply to you, subscribe. This channel is for people who are done being naive. Now let's dismantle the biggest lie that keeps people stuck. The lie that you have to become something before you can act like it. There's a belief most people carry without questioning it. The belief that identity follows achievement, that you become confident after you succeed, that you earn the right to carry yourself a certain way only after you've proven you deserve it. This sounds reasonable. It sounds humble. It sounds like the kind of thing good people believe, and that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Machiavelli understood that the masses are controlled not by force but by belief. If you can convince someone that they must wait, that they must earn, that they must prove themselves before they're allowed to act with certainty, then you've neutralized them. They'll spend years trying to gather enough evidence to justify confidence, and by the time they feel ready, the opportunity is gone. Here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. Identity doesn't follow achievement. Identity precedes it. You don't become confident because you succeeded. You succeed because you acted confident. The version of yourself that wins is not the one you'll become after winning. It's the one you must become now, before any evidence supports it. Let me show you how this works in practice. Imagine two people with identical skills applying for the same position. One of them has spent years building competence quietly, waiting to feel fully prepared before stepping forward. The other has spent less time on mastery, but has learned to communicate certainty, to carry themselves as if they've already done this 100 times. Who gets the job? The second person. Every single time. Not because they're better. Because they're better at signaling. Machiavelli wrote that the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Competence without perception is the lion without the fox. You're strong but blind. And in a world where decisions are made quickly based on surface reads, blindness is fatal. This is why successful people fake it till they make it. Not because they're frauds, because they understand that perception is the currency of opportunity. If you wait until you feel fully qualified, fully confident, fully ready, you'll wait forever. Feelings don't lead, actions do. And the identity you step into today shapes the opportunities you're offered tomorrow. Now I need to address something directly because this is where people get stuck. They hear fake it till you make it, and they think it means lie about your credentials, exaggerate your experience, fabricate results. That's not what this is. That's fraud, and fraud collapses. What I'm talking about is embodying the psychology of the person you're becoming before the external world catches up. There's a difference between lying about what you've done and acting like someone who's done it. One is deception, the other is preparation. Machiavelli would call it assuming the role before the title is granted. Kings didn't wait to feel royal. They acted royal, and the kingdom organized itself around that assumption. Let me make this practical. If you're building something, anything, a business, a skill, a reputation, there's a version of you that's still trying to prove you belong. That version apologizes too much, it over-explains, it seeks validation, it waits for permission. Then there's another version, the one that's already arrived. That version doesn't ask if it's allowed, it states, it decides. It moves as if the outcome is certain. Same person, different psychology, and the world treats those two versions completely differently. Here's what most people miss. The external world doesn't know what you're feeling inside. It only knows what you project. If you project uncertainty, people will hesitate. If you project clarity, people will follow. This isn't about tricking anyone. It's about refusing to let your internal doubts control your external presence. Machiavelli observed that men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. But here's the nuance. The deception isn't malicious, it's strategic. You're not deceiving people about your intentions, you're refusing to broadcast your insecurities, and there's a massive difference. Successful people know this. They know that doubt is internal, not external. They feel uncertain just like everyone else, but they've trained themselves not to perform that uncertainty in public. They've learned that the moment you show hesitation, people start questioning you. Not because they're cruel, but because humans are wired to follow certainty. We look for signals of confidence because confidence suggests competence, even when it doesn't guarantee it. This is the psychology behind faking it till you make it. You're not faking your goals. You're not faking your effort. You're faking the feeling of having already arrived so that the world stops testing you and starts treating you like someone who belongs. And here's the part that nobody talks about. Once the world starts treating you like you belong, you start believing it yourself. This is the loop most people never enter. They wait to believe before they act. But belief doesn't create behavior. Behavior creates belief. You act as if, and eventually the as if disappears. You're no longer pretending, you've become it. Machiavelli would say that fortune favors the bold not because boldness is magical, but because boldness creates momentum. And momentum creates results. And results create belief. But it starts with the decision to move before you feel ready. So when people criticize faking it, what they're really criticizing is the refusal to stay small until the world grants permission to grow. They're defending a system that keeps people in line, and maybe they don't even realize it. Maybe they genuinely believe humility means waiting, but Machiavelli knew better. Humility in the presence of wolves is just another word for prey. Now let's go deeper. Because understanding why this works requires understanding how people actually make decisions about other people. And once you see that, everything changes. Human beings make judgments fast, faster than they'd ever admit. Machiavelli understood that people are more influenced by appearances than by the underlying reality. In the modern world, researchers call this thin slicing, the ability to make complex judgments based on minimal information. It happens in seconds. Before you've said a word, people have already decided how much respect to give you, how much trust, how much authority. This isn't shallow, it's survival. For most of human history, quick judgments kept people alive. Is this person a threat? Can I trust them? Are they competent or dangerous? We didn't have time to wait for a full resume. We read posture, tone, eye contact, certainty, and we still do. Successful people don't fight this. They use it. They know that the first impression isn't about facts. It's about feeling. And if you can control the feeling you create in those first moments, you control the entire interaction that follows. Let me give you an example. Two people walk into a room. Both are equally qualified. One walks in like they're hoping to be accepted. Shoulders slightly forward, eyes scanning for approval, voice tentative. The other walks in like they're evaluating whether the room is worth their time. Posture open, gaze steady, tone assured. Who gets taken seriously? The second one, not because they're better, because they've signaled that they don't need permission. Machiavelli wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. This is the core of social power. What people experience in your presence matters more than what you've achieved in private. If you've worked for years in isolation but show up uncertain, your work becomes invisible. If you've barely started but show up certain, people assume there's substance behind the confidence. This is why faking it works. You're not lying about your achievements, you're controlling the signal. And the signal determines whether people lean in or pull back, whether they test you or trust you, whether they give you a chance or dismiss you before you've begun. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. The people who judge you for faking it are often the same people stuck waiting for permission themselves. They've internalized the rules so deeply that watching someone break them feels like betrayal. Machiavelli would call this the morality of the powerless. When you can't win, you redefine winning as immoral. That way, losing feels virtuous. But let's be honest. The person who refuses to fake it, who insists on waiting until they're perfect before they step forward, they're not more honest. They're more afraid, and they've dressed up that fear in the language of integrity so they don't have to confront it. I'm not saying fear is wrong. Fear is human, but calling it virtue is self-deception. And self-deception is the one lie Machiavelli had no patience for. Lie to your enemies if you must, but never lie to yourself about why you're not moving forward. Successful people feel fear too. They just don't let it dictate their behavior. They've learned to act in spite of uncertainty. And that's the skill nobody teaches, not confidence, not fearlessness, the ability to move while afraid, to project certainty while feeling doubt, to act like the person you're becoming even when you're not sure you'll get there. This is what faking it actually means. It means refusing to wait for your emotions to give you permission. It means understanding that action creates clarity, not the other way around. Machiavelli observed that men are driven more by necessity than by choice. Successful people create necessity. They put themselves in positions where they have to rise. And rising becomes inevitable not because they were ready, but because they made retreat impossible. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. Are you waiting to feel ready, or are you ready to act anyway? Because the world doesn't reward the person who waits. It rewards the person who moves. And if you're not moving, someone else is. Someone less qualified, less experienced, but more willing to step into the role before they've earned it. That's not unfair. That's reality. And reality doesn't care about your internal timeline. Now let's talk about what happens when you actually start applying this, because the shift isn't just external, it's internal, and that's where the real power lives. When you start acting like the person you're becoming, something strange happens. The world starts cooperating, not because you're manipulating it, but because you're finally aligning your behavior with your intentions. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. The fool waits until circumstances force change. The wise man changes before circumstances demand it. This is the hidden advantage of faking it till you make it. You're not waiting for success to give you confidence. You're using confidence to create success. And once that loop starts, it accelerates. People treat you differently. You get access to rooms you wouldn't have entered. Opportunities appear that weren't visible before. Not because you're lucky, because you're no longer invisible. Let me be specific. When you walk into a negotiation acting like you have options, people negotiate differently. When you pitch an idea like you've done it 100 times, people listen differently. When you carry yourself like someone who's already successful, people stop questioning whether you will be. They start asking how they can be part of it. This is not manipulation. This is understanding social dynamics. Machiavelli knew that power is as much about perception as possession. The prince who appears strong is strong, even if his army is small. The prince who appears weak is weak, even if his resources are vast. Appearance shapes reality because people make decisions based on what they believe, not on what's objectively true. Now I know some of you are thinking, but what if I fail? What if I act confident and then can't deliver? Here's the truth. You're going to fail either way. Failure is part of the process, but failing while moving forward teaches you something. Failing while waiting teaches you nothing. Machiavelli observed that it is better to be impetuous than cautious, because fortune is a woman, and if you wish to dominate her, you must beat and strike her. I'll translate that for the modern world. Momentum beats hesitation. Always, the person who acts and adjusts will outpace the person who plans forever, because action generates feedback, and feedback generates learning, and learning generates competence. But none of that starts until you move. So when you fake it, you're not pretending you're perfect. You're giving yourself permission to be imperfect in public. You're saying, I don't have all the answers, but I'm moving anyway. And that decision, that willingness to be seen before you're ready, that's what separates people who grow from people who stagnate. Here's something else that happens. You start attracting different people. The ones who were drawn to your uncertainty, the ones who liked you small and manageable, they'll pull back. Machiavelli warned that when you change, those who benefited from the old version of you will resist. They'll call you arrogant. They'll say you've changed, and they're right, you have. That's the point. But new people appear. People who recognize ambition, people who respect certainty, people who are also moving and looking for others who are doing the same. Your network shifts, and your network determines your net worth, not just financially but psychologically. The people around you either reinforce your growth or anchor you to who you used to be. Successful people curate their environment ruthlessly. They don't keep people around out of obligation or nostalgia. They keep people around who reflect the identity they're building. Machiavelli wrote that the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. If you're surrounded by people who think small, you'll think small. If you're surrounded by people who move decisively, you'll move decisively. This is why faking it isn't just about tricking others. It's about tricking yourself into a better environment. You act like you've arrived, and the people who have actually arrived start treating you like a peer. And once that happens, you're no longer faking, you're becoming. Now let's address the ethics, because I know this is where people get stuck. They think this is dishonest. They think this is taking something you haven't earned. Machiavelli would ask, earned according to whom? Who decides when you've earned the right to be confident? Who decides when you're allowed to act like you belong? If you wait for the world to tell you, you'll wait forever. Because the world doesn't care. The world is neutral. It responds to force, to clarity, to momentum. It doesn't hand out permission slips. It rewards those who take what they want and make it look inevitable. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The people who criticize faking it are usually the ones who never figured out how to do it. They're stuck in the same place they've always been, and watching someone else move forward without suffering the way they've suffered feels like cheating. Machiavelli called this the envy of the mediocre. They don't want you to stay honest. They want you to stay stuck, because your movement exposes their stagnation. So when someone tells you to wait your turn, to earn it the right way, to be humble, ask yourself, is this advice helping me or helping them? Because often, the people giving advice have the most to lose if you actually follow a different path. Successful people ignore advice from unsuccessful people. That sounds harsh, but it's strategic. Machiavelli wrote that men judge by the outcome. If someone hasn't achieved what you want to achieve, their opinion on how to get there is worthless. They're giving you a map to a place they've never been. This is why you have to become comfortable with being misunderstood. When you start faking it, people will judge. Let them. Their judgment has no power unless you give it power. And the moment you stop performing for their approval, you become free. Machiavelli understood that the greatest prison is the need to be liked. The ruler who needs everyone's approval will make decisions that please no one. The ruler who accepts that some will always disapprove makes decisions that move the kingdom forward. You're not here to be liked. You're here to become who you're capable of becoming. And if that makes people uncomfortable, that's their problem, not yours. Now let's bring this full circle, because the real question isn't whether faking it works. It does. The real question is, are you willing to do it? Are you willing to step into a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet? Are you willing to act like you've already won before anyone agrees? Most people aren't, and that's fine. The world needs people who wait. It needs people who follow. It needs people who ask permission, because those people make it easier for the rest of us to move. Machiavelli wrote that the masses are always impressed by appearances and outcomes. If you control appearances, you control outcomes. And if you control outcomes, you control your life. So here's what I want you to do. Stop waiting for confidence. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for someone to tell you you're ready. Decide right now that you're going to act like the person you want to become. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Now, walk into the next room like you own it. Speak like your words matter. Carry yourself like someone who's already successful, not because you're lying, because you're refusing to perform doubt in public. And watch what happens. Watch how people respond. Watch how opportunities shift. Watch how quickly the world starts treating you differently. This isn't magic. This is strategy, and strategy works. Machiavelli proved it 500 years ago. Successful people prove it every single day. The only question is whether you're going to keep judging them from the sidelines or whether you're going to join them. If this resonates, if you're tired of waiting, if you're ready to stop being naive and start being strategic, subscribe. This channel is for people who understand that the world rewards perception, not purity. And if you're still on the fence, drop a comment. Tell me whether you think faking it is dishonest or whether you think waiting for permission is just fear dressed up as virtue. Either way, think deeply, because the decision you make right now will determine whether you spend the next year becoming someone new or explaining why you're still the same.